One worry that I admit to have had before the volume started was with a massive tournament arc dropping in some new faces and the final impact of Cinder's scheme set to spring, could the show avoid its cast and those with key arcs being lost in the shuffle of these new introductions? Thankfully, I've come out of the volume feeling mighty positive of that, even with 21 new characters coming into the fold. Yes, some characters are still lacking a true plot relevance or solid exploration of their character in a focused arc, but for the most part, the new characters didn't overtake anyone's spot, more so supported those that were present already. Let's start on some of these fresh faces and with the new teams. For roles that we can assume might not appear ever again, I really like the effort that was put into the creation of these teams, regardless of their overall worth. Each team had units with distinct and interesting designs, and they all felt right at home for the occasion and the world. They were also used rather effectively against their opponents, with different approaches for their fights. Team Auburn were a level footing pair to Team RWBY, Team Bronze would be in a tactical sword to challenge Team Juniper's growth in that aspect, Team Indigo provided a team with fluid chemistry against Team Sun who had to work with a disadvantage early on, and then Team Funky working in mind games and personal attacks against Yang and Weiss. If I had to pick a favourite lot, it would probably be either Team Auburn or Team Indigo for their overall look and presentation in combat. In the end, while I wouldn't lose any sleep if these lots stay volume 3 only, I wouldn't hate on any returning to aid in future fights. Moving on to some more notable roles, and with the wide assortment of villains, despite only popping up at the end, Salem's reveal gave a fine tease for the future and the right note to end on for this volume. A sign things won't die down in terms of intense challenges to come, with a grander fight looming ahead, and of course she comes with many a mystery behind her as well, being an instant rivaling element against Ozpin, especially with how well she cuts into the man for using children in their seemingly personal war and even giving people hope to begin with. Though I doubt we'll see her in much in volume 4, likely only appearing in smaller moments as we still got major beef with Cinder. But hopefully with that enigma behind the Wicked Witch, it won't be long before we start to touch on her story. Speaking of Cinder, Miss Four and her allies have been up till now a bit of a frustrating mixed bag for me. They have solid amounts of charm, a level of danger behind them, and are pretty cool in terms of their looks, attitude and combat skills, but we needed to see not just what their plans were targeting, and the fiery lass and her cohorts being more active, but we also needed to know their reasonings, why they were doing all this, and what led them to becoming a team. Much to my joy, I do feel we got enough to satisfy my hunger in these areas, especially in regards to some meaning in the madness, and what brought these lot together, a lot of it wisely centered around Cinder. With the pair of Emerald and Mercury, her two most useful units, there's a tone of loyalty there because of a promise for a better life than the one that they left behind, while we were also able to see that they were capable of their own merits before Cinder came along, Emerald being a master thief and Mercury able to kill his father, a supposedly high quality assassin. The reveal of him being a disabled fighter, especially after the leg break trick, was a wickedly sweet twist. With these two working for Cinder out of that promise and because of their past, it helps solidify the idea that Merc and M would do anything to aid their last chance, and when they do so, they're quite skilled at the task. Not to say though that this group will stay this strong. There's some small bumps forming that may lead to a breakup in due time. Then with Roman and Adam, it's less working for Cinder out of loyalty, but more so an act of personal survival, both men deciding best to work with Cinder rather than against her. We don't know what drives Neo, but with Roman biting the dust, I'd imagine that's an aspect we'll see soon enough, especially in retaliation towards her fallen partner's enemies. So Roman Torchwick is now Grimchow, but I do like that he went out at his best. Confident, charismatic, and a good foil to RWBY, as a man who would accept the world good or bad so long as he's able to live his life, while RWBY is of course ever believing in making the world a better place and never giving up. His passing though does leave a spot open for Adam to take center stage as the next big villain of focus alongside Cinder and Salem. Interestingly, we do see touches of him still being a loyal leader to his kind, and we know now that he didn't join Cinder's group willingly. But man, this Adam that we saw wasn't something I expected to see. We all assumed that he would eventually become Blake's biggest personal rival in the grand scheme of things, as the two clash over their differing steps to better the world for Faunus kind, but the RWBY crew smartly gave him something beyond just being a bad guy Faunus and being Blake's former partner. That being his vendetta against Blake, peppered with a twisted sense of love from the revolutionary towards Miss Belladonna. It's actually quite chilling and yet thrilling as well. Not only do we have that element of their different paths on their journey for justice, but now future confrontations will be tinged with Blake trying to survive Adam's tirade against her, and limit the damages that he causes to those she cares about, as shown with her breaking off from her friends, likely to avoid Yang's fate repeating itself. The fact that Adam is ready and willing to even physically hurt Blake, as much as emotionally so, makes any future scene that much more tense. Adam may be too far gone to ever be redeemed, but it's gonna be fun regardless to see how Blake copes with this brand new challenge compared to how she dealt with the likes of Roman. Volume 3 was also one that Cinda herself desperately needed for me. Up until this volume, the most we got out of Cinda was that she's an intimidating, calculated tactician and she's not half bad in combat. But here we saw the might behind her venomous threats that warrants the respect and fear that she forms in those around her, aided by the portion of maiden power that she was revealed to have had in her possession. Even then, we saw that she was hardly a wallflower before gaining the maiden power, as shown in the flashback, where she's able to maintain a good balance against Amber. And it also explored her manipulative mind, forming sweet words to win over our allies, be it by comfort or force. Even with it being revealed that she's not the major baddie though, there is still enough from this volume to make sure that she's still just as hated and deadly a threat as her superior. Finally able to back up her threats and unleash her scheme with a vicious, unshaken drive, and from it has become even more powerful. Able to claim that she came out of a clash with Ozpin fine, and having slain one of the best fighters on the hero side, Impera. That alone keeps her from falling in status as a force that we want to see taken down. She's killed a much loved character, and with her taking out one of the good guys' strongest units, it highlights how much stronger our heroes must become to even match her, let alone best her. She will definitely be staying around as a massive challenge that must be defeated if peace is ever to return. Though I do hope with Cinder now more involved than ever, she can be allowed to show off more to her personality and nature. She was finally able to become an active member beyond all of those shots of scheming in her home base, and we even saw her calm, collected nature thrown off when RWBY revealed a power that she never expected. We've not seen a lot of varying emotions from Miss Fall, and I hope that this sets the tone for Cinder to be portrayed in different elements. On the good side, Tai Yang's true debut was a nice reward after all the madness beforehand. I got the idea easily that he is indeed a father who, despite his flaws, is trying his best to raise his daughters well, but with everything in the past and the Battle of Beacon, it kinda gives him more reasons to be concerned about them, and that makes his attitude with his former partner Crow all the more interesting with their conflicting opinions, one clearly more willing to let the girls get involved again than the other. One of the two bigger debuts though gave us Winter, and after many debates about what is she like and what is her relationship with Weiss like, I'm really approving the character we got, even if it was for only a short while. Winter's unique mix of the soldier and the sister mindset when dealing with Weiss made for one of the most interesting relationships in the series yet. Even with its bumps, you can see what would lead to Weiss looking up to her, and her parental-like status could be a major factor next volume with Weiss going back home. She's not flawless though, thankfully. Thanks to Crow, we can see that her mature front can buckle, which adds for a fun relationship between those two as well. In the end, while I was sad she didn't appear as much as others in the volume, I can easily say I wasn't disappointed in the character. Though the standout debutant has to be Crow himself. Teased ever since the first episode, his first time on stage was well worth the wait. Though his opening scene revealing him as a drunk was a fun surprise, yet that aspect to him actually feels kind of fitting as well. Straight from the off, I got the idea that he's an experienced huntsman that's been worn and torn by the things he's seen and done, and the world outside of the kingdoms. And I don't think they made him a drunk just to give him a quirk. That stained picture of Team Stark says enough to me that he's a heavy drinker for some classic drowning of the sorrows. Aside from that, like with Winter to Weiss, he does have times where he can show some casualness, especially around his nieces. He was brash, no nonsense, confrontive, and yet quirky, considerate, and supportive in his own rather unique ways, and he more than lived up to the hype for me. It's gonna be interesting though with him having to take up where Ozpin left off. Might this new challenge force his hand into becoming more serious? Crow's addition to the story also gave us a bigger confrontive element to Ironwood. Yes, his actions have been debated for and against between the adults beforehand, but Crow was much more blunt and in your face in this dispute. It wasn't a case though of Crow flat out hating Ironwood. He did protect him from that griffin, and he knew well enough that James wasn't to blame for things. But it was good to see Ironwood, after rocking the group a little beforehand with reporting to the council and whatnot, be firmly noted the negatives to his good intentioned moves. And alongside that, the general is a flawed man. He made mistakes putting too much faith in his military might, and not telling Ozpin about Penny and how he had to deal with the backlash. Plus we got to see the general get into some action, which really helps sell the fact that this guy can actually deal when he needs to be caught into action. Penny herself, while having a tiny input on the volume, did leave quite the mark with her destruction. But unlike some others I could name, it seems logical to assume that this isn't the last that we'll see of the Ginger Synthetic. My only issue though with her role was with the odd input of her forming a plan to stay in Beacon. Now that hope does fit her, that's not the issue. It's only logical for her to want to stay in Beacon where her first true friends are. But after teasing she was forming a plan, it never got explored again before she was wrecked. I guess it could be seen as no matter what she had in mind, she would still have met the same fate. And her death was put to good use to aid Cinder's lies, but still, it was odd to not even see one sign of a plan in motion. It could have been some solid additional aid to make her end that much more sad, seeing her trying to stay in Beacon only ended up to failing hard. But alas, it was a plot point left to the rubbish bin. Though besides that, what happened to Ciel, her partner in the tournament? How come we didn't see her react to Penny's death, or in fact at all after her introduction? Anyway, this volume did add something that I'm glad to have seen. Some exploration into Ozpin. The Headmaster has been one of the show's biggest mysteries, and while we don't have a straight out answer to many questions tied to the man, we have come out of the volume with some good building blocks to start having a better understanding of him, beyond him being a considerate and wise man, aided by some supposed long line of experiences in his life. The fact he's also a major element tied to the head villain gives his role much more worth beyond him being the leading position of the academy, which is handy given we're not going to be at the school setting for some time now. Will we see much more of him and the rest of his school faculty in the next volume? I can't say. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Ozpin's fate is left up in the clouds until the end of volume 4, but I do welcome the fact that we're now starting to touch on the enigma behind him.